Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to the Game 8 review of the World Championship. I apologize for it being late. I had work yesterday, and yeah, by the time I got out of work I was exhausted, so I wasn't able to record. But it's now 3:40 a.m., so I want to record before I have to go do some more work today. And then I'll probably have a late video, unfortunately, again for Game 9, but I will make sure to post it still. But Ding had the white pieces today. Score is currently 4-3 in favor of Nepo, who has black today. We get d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop comes over to b4. We see e3, castles, a3, and now there's normally, people just take, because you could kind of get chased forever. Well, actually you could just lose the bishop, unless you were to go this way. So generally you want to just capture the knight or completely retreat back to e7. He chooses to capture. You take on c3. We get d6, knight e2, c5, knight to g3. You don't want to capture here, obviously, because then you're just left with three different pawns on the c file. And then after a recapture, and say trades, for example, the rook is going to be the one with the file. Knight to c6. We have rook a2, which is a little bit of a weird move, as the computer indicates here with the question mark. Generally what rooks want to do is stay somewhere over here, so they could be connected for 1, and for 2 so they could control the file. White could have controlled this file by just going to b1, but I guess he would rather go over here to a2, which does lead to some, questioning as to what he's going to be doing there. We see b6, e4, bishop comes over to a6, and he's targeting this pawn, but I wonder if he's trying to do so with like a d5 break. That way if you were to capture, then he's going to lose castling privileges unless he captures with the knight, and then he has to develop all over again. We get the bishop coming over to g5, we get h6. Again, you're probably going to either see the bishop come back or capture. Ooh, and he actually plays h4, and computer doesn't really like it, but it does seem to be playable. Black follows the standard plan based on an attack on the c4 pawn. G5, h4. The bishop is not going anywhere. This is all part of Ding's preparation. Hx g5, a good move, and possibly also prepared beforehand. Which happens. Then you see the capture back, and you see g6 occur. And I guess the reason being that if you, that if you move the knight, then we're just going to have queen come over to h5, which obviously would just lead to a very short game. So you don't want that. So it's better to just protect the square from the queen, offer the knight right back, and then you'll be able to grab a pawn here, which we see. E5 from Ding, which the computer also does not seem to really like. We get a capture, and then a push. Again, you don't want to capture here because you're going to be left with double pawns. Obviously these pawns were doubled, beforehand, but whenever there's pawns to the side, like your own pawns to the side somewhere, then there's still hope that they can get undoubled. However, the second you get rid of all your, pawns to the left or right of your double pawns, they're kind of there permanently, and then they become a super big weakness. Knight goes over to e7. Pawn keeps pushing to d6. Now that is now a passed pawn. Knight has to go over to f5. Trade is declined. Then the queen has to go to d8 and is trying to cover that promotion score. Queen comes over to d3. I don't know if we're going to see it, try to come over to h3 and look for another mate. The king does move to the side, so it looks like he is preparing for that move to be met with a rook. We see g4, so now we kind of know that this king has no plans of castling anytime soon. And this knight is actually slowly running out of squares. Right now the only square it has available is here if it wants to stay on the board. Which it chooses to make this pin instead. Excuse me. We see rook come over to h3, get out of the way of the pin. We see knight come to h4, protected by the queen. G5 is played, so now the knight is no longer protected. And Ding grabs the white knight, which the computer really did not like. So you get a recapture here. And now this is still hanging. It comes back home for a second. Rook comes over to d2 because you need something to protect this square. And the knight is capable of grabbing it now if you would like to do that. The only thing is that then you run into queen d3. And I wonder if that's even that bad, because you could probably just go knight b7, and I think it's still playable. Let me see what the computer will say about this. Queen takes e5. Oh, okay. So you're going to get this with tempo, is what the issue is. Rook comes over to h8. Ding takes, so we get a trade. And we see d7 happen on the board, which the engine also didn't like. I wonder if it did prefer this capture. No, it actually preferred rook to d3. I don't know if the idea is to threaten the queen, or just to, protect these pawns. I'm not all that sure. Or to keep this this knight from ever having a good square. But regardless, the computer did not seem to like d7. Maybe that was a little bit of an ambitious pawn move. But now the rook defends so that the queen is free to do other duties. We now take the pawn. Trade is offered, trade is declined. We see a bit of repetition. Game didn't end there, did it? No, okay. So queen comes over to c7. Queen comes down to h4. And what is the idea with this one? I'm assuming that if you take the rook, there's some sort of mate threat. But I don't see it just yet. Okay, so we have this. King has to go over or block. But I'm not seeing just yet how that's losing. e4 check. Okay, so it's not. So that was just a bad move, is what it was. e2. Yeah, he just has a way to block this. Yeah, he's never getting mated with that. So it was just an inaccurate move. But it looks like Ding was scared of it, so he didn't capture the rook. Queen is going to take on to g5, so now this is protected. King is going to come over to c2. He's just trying to get into, safer territory right here. Oops, I missed a move. Queen comes over to e7, contesting this pawn. That way these two pieces are now going to kind of be locked in right there. And you might have a move in the future where the knight tries to blockade the rook. Right now that wouldn't work because the queen would just capture, but it is a possibility. Bishop comes over to g2. We see e5 occur. I don't understand the reasoning behind e5, but there's no threat, right? I guess you kind of cut off some of the queen's squares, so he's stuck in this quadrant right here. We're going to see the bishop come over to e4, looking to take. Another set of double pawns for my friend Nepo. Knight moves out of the way. One pawn is captured. Knight comes over to g4. Bishop comes to f3, attacking the knight. And he sacrifices the knight in exchange for trying to get the pawn, which Ding accepts. And before he grabs the pawn, he actually plays e4, threatening the bishop. Now if you were to move back with the rook, I think you would see something like an e3. So he pins the queen instead, so this capture will not occur. and he just supports the pawn with e4, so the queen can now leave, and the bishop will still be under threat. Queen grabs another pawn on b6. So now that pawn is recaptured by Nepo, that scary pass pawn that we had. The queen comes over to b8, so that it could try to escape, because as it was in one of these squares, the rook could have just perpetually checked it, so that the queen would be stuck between these two ranks, and that pawn move from earlier that was meant to block the queen, well, now when it progressed to threaten the bishop, it's now still stopping the queen from getting out. So we could have seen a forced draw, I think, that way. The computer is reading 0, 0, 0 everywhere. Queen comes over to d6, and the idea now is that you both have this check. You prevent the rook from coming to d2, and you're still threatening the f3 bishop, and all the while you're offering a queen trade. Queen accepts. Bishop takes the pawn on e4. I think that if you didn't take the pawn and you tried to escape, that these pawns would kind of just march. It's true that, Ding has these 2 pawns on the c-file, so it doesn't look too bad, right? 3 pawns versus 3 pawns and a bishop. But now you could really see how weak these double pawns are. I mean, they're being stopped by 1 pawn for 1, and then for 2, these 3 are actually marching down, connected with one another, so it's hard for a bishop or a rook to stop them. So we see an exchange right here. King goes to f6, and a draw is reached. So both sides were winning at some point in this game, not by like a crazy amount. I would say that, if anyone, Ding was winning by a decent amount of material and positionally, but he was not able to convert it. The commentators, because I saw the game live, were basically saying that they think that he was rushing some of his decisions late game just because of his time trouble that he had in Game 7. So it's going to be interesting to see if his nerves will get to him today as well, or if he'll be able to play clean chess all the way through. But it seems like Nepo was able to escape 2 games in a row. The first time he was able to get a win in a pretty drawed position, I would say, and now he's able to get a draw in a position that he was losing towards the late game. So Nepo is in the lead, but I do think that Ding has been playing better. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think there's another game today. They kind of messed with my idea of the schedule. I was like 2 games on and 1 game off. But I think today there is going to be a game, so I'm going to make another review after the game. But again, like I said, I have work today, so I'll be working, and then probably later in the afternoon or at night, I'll be able to release the video. But thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.